Hi friends, welcome back to my studio. Today's lesson is how to make this rose into a card like this. Pick up your paints, let's paint along together. So here's the outline of the picture I drew from this rose. You can trace it or use a light box, either way. And it's 4 by 6, so I can make it into a birthday card. The colors I'm going to use at the moment are Holbein Cadmium Yellow Lemon, Winsor Newton Cadmium Yellow, Winsor Newton French Ultramarine, and later on I will be using Quinacridone Gold from Daniel Smith. The brush I'm using today is a Princeton Velvet Touch with a number 6. Really like Princeton a lot. So let's get started. Here's the picture of the rose. If you see where I'm pointing out, these are the very lightest parts of the rose that we're going to want to keep light. I used a drawing gum frisket to lighten up all of the really light colors, and then I let it dry completely. So on this, the other parts that I'm pointing out are green, so I want to make sure that I don't touch those while I'm doing the background color. I'm starting out with the cadmium yellow, the lightest color, because I want that to be the one that shows through. I put a little bit of water into the paint as I'm letting it spread. This is called wet on dry, but I'm making it have a lot of water with it so that it flows all the way around the rose. I'm just going to paint the whole rose with this beginning color. It's a background color. This one you want to make as light, but because it's going to be the brightest color on the edges, in those areas you do want it to be the full tint of the color that's coming through. We will be adding other colors to darken for the shadows. I have 2 water cups. One is going to be from cleaning out the water just to keep it flowing. The other one I keep completely clean for when I need to put clear water back on my paint. There's a little bit of yellow peeking through between the flowers, between the leaf petals down here at the bottom. I'll make sure I cover that too. So now I'm going to let this all dry. Once it's dry, then I'm going to add in some clear water just where the shadow is. You need to let the paint dry first at the very beginning before you put more clean water on. Otherwise, the wet water or the wet paint will cause blooms and will cause back runs. So you let the first layer dry, add some clear water in, and then we're going to drop in the cadmium yellow for a deeper shadow base. Here I am adding some more of the lemon yellow just to get it in the area where I want the shadow to go. And then when I'm painting in the cadmium yellow, you see that I'm not really brushing, making large brush strokes. I'm tapping the water and the wet paint that I already have down, and allow the paint just to spread on its own. This is the joy of watercolor, is that it spreads. Wherever you have water touching it, it will spread. Wherever you don't have water, it will stay away. So that's how you use the idea of blending. This area doesn't have water, so it's going to be very straight lines, very hard edges, which I will need at the top. There's a little bit of shadow up here, so I'm just going to add some more cadmium yellow at the top of the rosebud. This area down here is still damp, so as I add just a little bit more color, it flows easily and doesn't cause a hard edge with the shadow. As you can see from this side, there's a light little shadow on there and a light little shadow to show the edge of the curve, and a darker on the top and on the very bottom, darker shadow. So for those, I am going to be using the quinacridone gold, just to darken up the shadow a little bit. And this is still wet from the underlying paint, so all I have to do is tap the quinacridone where I want it to go. I'm adding a little bit of extra clear water just so that it flows carefully only in the shadow parts that I want it to go in. A little bit of water at the top so that I can put some deeper shadows at the top. A lot of people like to tape their papers down. You can use painter's tape, masking tape, washi tape. Other times on small items like this, I don't need to tape it down if I'm just going to hold it. And other times it needs to be able to be picked up and moved with the water flow so that you can create different designs and different flows with the water by tilting the paper. And here I'm putting in the quinacridone gold just for the deeper shadow. I don't need to brush hard. I'm just tapping it in so that it flows into the water that I've already got layered there. Sometimes brushing it hard or actually creating those brush strokes pushes the paint deeper into the fiber of the paper, which then lessens the brightness of the color. It loses some of the luminosity. So just tapping it into the liquid, tapping it into the water, the loose, the paint that's already there, will let the water flow without creating it to be too deep into the fibers. This says I put a line of quinacridone gold down on the edge, and now I'm bringing in just clear water just to let it flow to the inside of that petal. I'm causing a little bit of a shadow there by the tip of my paintbrush. I'm adding a little bit of clear water at the top just to add in some more shadow and let it flow with the water. And a little bit more defining lines on the top with the quinacridone gold. This part where I'm adding in more shadow, this is up to you of how deep you want your shadows to be. You can continue to do layer upon layer to darken those shadows. Each time you darken them, make sure you dry them so that the new layer is going on to a dry canvas again with your, I have a embossing gun that I use for drying. Now I'm going to be doing the green. At times you can use green right out of a tube, but many times to make it look more realistic, you need to mix your greens up. So here's a sample of some combinations. You have cadmium yellow and French ultramarine, cadmium yellow and cobalt blue, lemon yellow and French ultramarine, and lemon yellow and cobalt. And that gives you the different greens. Mixing those together in different amounts causes the nuances that show up to be more realistic for your greens than just using a sap green, for example, out of a tube. I'm going to start by putting clear water everywhere that I'm going to be mixing the colors together. I did mix up those 4 different combinations on my palette, And now as I'm putting them onto the rose, I'm going to kind of tap them in at different levels so that there's different layers of green on the stem. This is all just clear water, just so that when I put the green on, it flows well. Too much water will cause the paint to lose some of its brightness. So as you're putting it on, you want to make sure it's all even and doesn't have puddles, because those will lessen the brightness that you're trying to achieve by the colors. Now that there's water here, I can tap the green on and allow it to start to flow on its own in many of the areas. I'm more guiding the paint along the petal area rather than painting it on like you would if you had acrylic or if you had oil. The water is what is the technique and the tool that moves the paint along rather than you painting all of these areas. As I'm going, I'm trading out all the different varieties of green that I just created, just to give nuances of the light shining on it and of the shadow. The paintbrush has a very tight tip. I can also paint large areas with the lower part holding water quite well, but the tip comes to a fine tip, so I can get in there with the little details. While the green is still wet, I'm just going to be adding in a little bit more in different areas to create a deeper shadow. The yellow is completely dry now, so as I paint the green next to it, the green will not flow into the yellow. If you wanted to have more of a painterly loose feel, you would do all of this painting simultaneously. The greens would come right after the yellows and not allow any of it to get dry all the way, and so the greens then flow into the yellow and make more of a loose abstract look. Try both ways. And so here's our finished picture. Well, that was fun. Thanks for joining me on that. And if this was something you liked, please hit the like button. And to be notified of the next lesson or card that we're trying to make every Friday, put the subscribe button on and you'll be notified the next time I upload videos. Thank you for joining me today.